Hey friends, welcome to Top 10 Nerd. I'm your host Kelly Pally, and today we are diving into a list called the Top 10 Hottest Male Superheroes with Powers We Don't Understand. Now, we recently counted down their female counterparts with the hottest female superheroes with powers we don't understand, and we here at Top 10 Nerd are all about equal opportunity. So now it's time we talk about hot superpowered dudes who do confusing stuff but they are still quite physically attractive. Who's ready to objectify fictional characters? I know I am. But to be fair, just like the hottest female superhero list, we're going to be focusing more on the powers and the comic book science behind them rather than calling out heroes whose booties are bootylicious. I think I just aged myself with that phrase. What do the kids say these days? Thick booty? Ugh. Alright, let's just get to it, guys. Number 10, Superman. Initially, Superman doesn't seem like a candidate who belongs on this list. For the most part, like everyone, even those not into comics, understands what Superman can do. Faster than a speeding bullet, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. He's not called the Man of Steel for nothing. But over the years, Clark has had a slew of powers that make zero sense. They've fallen into obscurity primarily because they are baffling at best. They almost feel like the writers of these comics and these stories were just like, you know what, let's just do a weird thing and then find a way to justify that with some absurd means in the story. Case in point, Superman's ability to shoot miniature versions of himself out of his fingertips. After coming into contact with an alien spacecraft, Superman gains the ability to shoot a mini-me out of his fingertips, and that mini version gains all of his powers. Man of Steel just remains invulnerable. He then sends out his mini-self to do all of the dirty work and heavy lifting that he normally takes care of, yet he begins to resent him and allows this miniature version of himself to die. Then gets really philosophical about it, and then the story just abruptly ends. His powers return in full by the end of the story. There is a very surface level Golden Age explanation for everything that happens in this story, as is with most of Superman's more absurd powers, and as you can guess, it's pretty superficial. All in all, don't take a lot of his Golden Age abilities that haven't stuck around too seriously. There's a reason why they haven't. And at number 9, Aquaman. Here we have another controversial pick for this list, because of his powers, not because of his babeliness. Come on guys, cut the dude some slack. Aquaman has one specific power that often becomes the butt of jokes, but is also an ability that people generally misunderstand, to the extent that in the New 52, Jeff Johns actually made a point of addressing it within the first few pages of Aquaman's relaunch. We are talking about Arthur's ability to communicate with fish, and what exactly it entails. So in that issue of Aquaman, he notes that he doesn't have conversations with fish. Their brains are too primitive. Instead, this ability of his allows the King of Atlantis to reach into their midbrains and telepathically push them to help him out. Now apparently this works with all aquatic life minus dolphins, which Aquaman notes is a whole other story. And now I'm just curious. Now all I can think of is the Deep from The Boys on that scene in the show with the dolphin. Oh, but also the lobster.
What's up, man? How'd you end up here?
Oh, tell me about it. Me too. What's that?
Oh.
And at number 8, Doctor Strange. Aside from confusing readers about their sexualities thanks to his mad DILF vibes, yes I went there, Stephen Strange is a character who can often be a little perplexing if you're unfamiliar with the extent of his magical prowess. Strange's abilities are thanks to both magical powers and the use of artifacts. The Sorcerer Supreme draws power from mystical entities including the likes of Agamotto, Sidorak, Oshtur, and Watum. Described as the mightiest magician in the cosmos by the entity of Eternity, he can cast a plethora of spells and knows his way around a slew of weapons. He's also accomplished in a whole bunch of martial arts disciplines. Strange uses artifacts like the Cloak of Levitation, which allows him to fly, the Eye of Agamotto, which in the comics uses light to negate evil magic, the Book of Vishanti, which contains a vast knowledge of white magic that he often pulls from, and the Orb of Agamotto, which is a crystal ball that gives him clairvoyance. In conclusion, he has a powerful mastery of magic, but uses a whole lot of tools to help him out. And as our editor Dylan described, he has a lickable mustache. So, take what you will from that, my friends. In at 7, Human Torch. Johnny Storm is too hot to handle. Always the ladies' man in the comics, he's a character who is as hot as the flames on his body. Yep, kill me now. I am not above easy puns, my friends. So, why is the second Human Torch confusing as far as his powers are concerned? Well, as one of our producers put so eloquently, how does he not burn alive when he's constantly on fire? For starters, Johnny Storm's powers are thanks to the mutagenic effects of cosmic radiation that he was exposed to alongside the other members of the Fantastic Four. He can envelop his body in a fiery plasma that does not harm his body. It's a flaming aura, if you will. Initially, this power was chalked up to transmutation in the first 2 issues of the Fantastic Four, but that eventually changed to being a flaming aura. Igniting his body requires oxygen though, meaning he's limited to environments that contain oxygen in order to do so. His flame aura also allows him to hold a person without them feeling discomfort from the heat. So he's all fire, but he can manipulate whether or not that fiery plasma causes damage to people or not. The more you know. And at 6, Iceman. Iceman Bobby Drake may be one of the OG X-Men, but over time his powers have grown exponentially since, with the character now considered to be an Omega level mutant. Not too shabby there, Bobby. So what is that all about? Well, he's considered an Omega level because his abilities can theoretically influence the ecosystem of the entire world. He can instantly decrease the temperature of ambient vapor in his immediate environment to below 0 degrees Celsius, turning it into ice. Now this ice does not break unless he wills it to. He is immune to sub-zero temperatures and can convert his body into organic ice, and he's able to perceive the thermal energy level of objects around him. Now he doesn't emanate cold, but rather decreases thermal energy. Now while he hasn't been able to tap into his full potential yet, when he was possessed by Emma Frost, we got to see a better glimpse at his capabilities on a whole new level. Frost was able to control all forms of moisture, freeze the fluids inside of people's bodies, that's fun, and travel as either liquid, solid, or gas. Now unfortunately for Bobby, Emma refused to train him on how to pull off these stunts. We're sure he'll get there eventually. And at number 5, Colossus. Colossus is one giant hunk of man metal. Actually, while many believe him to be a lovable Russian aluminum-looking fellow with literal buns of steel, the nuances of his powers often get lost in the mainstream understanding of the character. Colossus possesses the ability to transform his body into a steel-like substance, an organic steel so to speak, that is made of an unknown composition but depicts similar properties to osmium, a chemical element in real life that is hard, brittle, and found as a trace element in alloys and platinum ores. When he transforms, he grows in height, reaching approximately 7 feet and 5 inches. His metal form also gives him superhuman strength, stamina, and durability, and he's self-sustaining, meaning he doesn't need food, water, or oxygen to keep on kicking. Pretty impressive. So he's not just an entirely steel man. There's subtleties to Colossus. Up next, number 4, Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel is one of the more new characters on our list. Also known as Adam Bernard Brashear, Blue Marvel first appeared in the comic Adam, Legend of the Blue Marvel, issue 1, in 2008, and has a whole slew of powers at his fingertips thanks to his ability to absorb antimatter energy, which derives from the interdimensional universe called the Negative Zone. Now he releases energy from this antimatter, giving him superhuman strength, the likes of Hulk and Thor, nigh invulnerability, he can withstand a nuclear detonation and survive in the vacuum of space, he can fly, he has enhanced mental perception, can generate energy, capable of molecular manipulation, and can emit light from his body. He is considered to be a stable antimatter reactor. He himself describes it as channeling exotic particles generated by a stable event horizon, caused by the interaction of opposing positive matter and negative matter universes. Science in comics. In at 3, Captain Atom. Captain Atom is like a sexier, more relatable version of Dr. Manhattan at times. Less blue wang wandering in the wind. I am not sorry. There have been 2 iterations of the character over the years. The first created by Steve Ditko and Joe Gill for Charlton Comics, who was called Alan Adam. The second, who is the focus of our number on this list, is Nathaniel Adam, who first appeared in 1987 and was the product of a military experiment gone haywire. Similar to Dr. Manhattan, he was disintegrated and then reformed, giving him his powers. His skin is tied into the quantum field, allowing him to absorb and manipulate infinite amounts of energy, theoretically speaking, limited by only willpower and imagination. This means he can give Superman a run for his money big time, if you'd like to use that as a means of comparison, of course. Now his abilities stem from a connection to the quantum field, giving him a virtually infinite source of quantum energy to pull from, which he can then manipulate as he pleases. Now in the past he did have a limitation on how much energy he could absorb, with too much uncontrollably transporting him throughout time. This is something he's grown to better control though, and it is predicted to eventually be a hurdle that he'll get over. In at 2, Element Lad. Element Lad is a fellow who has the ability to transmute elements by touch. What does that mean? Well, Element Lad, aka Jan Era, first appeared in Adventure Comics issue 307 in 1963 as a member of the Legion of Superheroes. He's aged like a fine wine, and his powers cease to disappoint, or continue to disappoint depending on your feels about it. He transmutes substances on an atomic level, an ability which is native of his homeworld of Trom. It lets him take a chemical element and change it from its original nature into a different chemical element. This transformation lasts a total of 60 seconds and requires him to make physical contact with the material that he is transmuting. So once you wrap your head around that, he is a simple fellow to comprehend. Sometimes though, he does get confused with his Earth 247 self, who actually has a way better skill set than his 616 iteration. That version of Element Lad can change his own chemical makeup and has divine powers. He calls himself the Progenitor. He's lived for billions of years and can actually create or destroy life and is practically omnipotent. Looks like the 616 Jan is seriously missing out. And last but not least, in at number 1, Wundarr the Aquarian. Who the hell is this muscular mighty Jesus man? It's Wundarr the Aquarian, a hero who has nothing to do with aquatic life, who you may not have even known existed. Well, lucky for you, now you do. Wundarr first appeared in Adventure to Fear issue 17 back in 1973 as a parody of Superman who would inevitably fall into obscurity by the time the 90s rolled around. Similar to DC's Man of Steel, his scientist father sent him away from his home planet, believing it was on the brink of destruction, only to be incorrect about the matter, meaning little Wundarr was sent to Earth all for nothing. How tragic. Now you may be wondering, how on earth did this beautiful bearded man become irrelevant? God, I am so sorry everybody. It could be because of how confusing his powers were. So, he has the basics: superhuman strength, limited flight, he leaps real good, and can project energy. Here's where it gets weird. He has a null energy field surrounding him, known as an entropy field, that nullifies all forms of energy. He's also capable of transmitting knowledge through touch. Two very unique powers that are kind of odd. So essentially, he's like a brain rogue. Okay, so let's talk about that first ability. Buff Jesus here absorbs energy into his body, which converts to kinetic energy that would increase his strength, energy projection, all that jazz. But after he was exposed to the cosmic cube, he got an upgrade that gave him that null field of his. Now think of it this way. Say a bullet with kinetic energy is shot at him, and that kinetic energy is higher than what his null field would allow for. That bullet enters the field around him and its energy is nullified. Essentially, he's walking around with an invisible force field that nullifies all energy that gets into that field around his body up to 5 feet. He can't disable it even when he's unconscious, but he can expand it up to 500 feet. So in a way, it's kind of like a protective shield. Now his encounter with the cosmic cube also gave him unimaginable knowledge of everything and nothing, which yes, we know doesn't entirely make sense, but use your imagination. Wundarr will often transmit his knowledge to another being in order to create harmony and calm them down. It's all touch based. He's essentially like a brain rogue. Still confused? Well, there's a reason why he's only made a cameo in alternate realities in more recent years. And if you're curious why he's called Wundarr the Aquarian, well, it's just because he kind of liked the name Aquarian. He looks like Jesus, has nothing to do with aquatic life, and is basically a brain rogue that nullifies everything around him. It's kind of a depressing fate, isn't it? Alright, there we have it, friends. What other male superheroes do you think are studs but have confusing abilities? Give us a shout in those comments below and let us know. And mayhaps we will do a part 2. If you guys dug this video, spread that love, hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe to Top 10 Nerd for more lists just like this one. In the meantime though, I will catch you all in the next video. Bye!